he drops what can only be described as a aggressive black scent.
Hot take, that wasn't his fault. It's such a weird line, man. Welcome to Big Name Bad Movie, the show where we talk about A-list actors and their worst films. Coming to you live from the Is Fortnite Overrated couch. I'm your host, Cameron.
And I'm your co-host, Joe, and today we're talking about Cutting Class starring Brad Pitt.
It was just another ordinary, dull, and boring semester at Worley High.
Attention, faculty and students. This is Mr. Dante, your principal.
The classrooms were in disorder.
As of today, you're suspended.
All right, so Brad Pitt, what do we think about him?
You know, let's take the personal out of it for a second, because I think in recent months and years, we've had some stuff come out about old Bradley, namely that he's kind of a deadbeat dad.
To say the least.
To say the least. If we're going to remove that from the equation, I love Brad Pitt. Like, I love his work.
Great actor.
Yeah.
Great actor.
You haven't seen it, I know, but I love Ocean's 11. We both.
Dude, why you gotta out me like that?
Come on, man. We have a movie podcast.
I know. That's why I'm like, do not put me on blast by saying that I have not seen Ocean's 11, man.
Yeah, the original's great. We both love Fury.
Both love Fury, an underrated World War II movie.
It's become like the new, like the nerdy Lord of the Rings fun fact where it's like, he actually broke his toe.
Yes.
Kicking the helmet.
It's like, that like Shia LaBeouf slept in his own shit for months or whatever.
I don't know. I feel like with Cutting Class, it's like, it's not even worth talking about Brad Pitt's career as much because he's done like nothing before this.
He was in like a few things here and there, very small roles, never like the main character of anything. He was in like an episode of Jump Street, the original back in the 80s. But he this was definitely his first, dare I say, breakout role.
What year did this come out?
1989.
Okay.
So before like everything. I'm trying to think of stuff he was in the 90s.
90s Brad Pitt, he did Legends of the Fall, Interview with the Vampire.
Seven,
which we talked about. 90s,
which we talked about in the last episode. And coincidentally, I saw a comment saying that 8mm and 7 are not similar. Did you watch the episode?
Let's do a little fact check there. Written by the same guy.
Written by the same guy.
If y'all haven't seen the last episode, go check it out because I feel like the 8mm episode is really interesting.
It's a banger.
But I keep hearing like on Reddit and like friends keep pulling me aside and just saying that like they love 8mm, and I'm like, I don't get it. But
yeah.
It's cool that people have different opinions, and maybe people will like Cutting Class starring Brad Pitt.
Sure. I mean, not that we want to talk about critical reception because it was like very unknown, but it got a 13% on Rotten Tomatoes.
It's pretty universally not liked.
Yeah. But it was his first big role, so we want to talk about it. So briefly, let's just go over the plot of this movie, and then we'll just talk about our highlights. So kid is released from a mental institution after murdering his father. He was only in there for 5 years. Coincidentally, there are a bunch of murders happening around the high school that he goes to after transitioning back into normal life.
I wonder who it could be.
It can't be anybody.
It can't be the kid who already murdered his father.
Can't be.
Brad Pitt plays a kid named Dwight. He's like a basketball jock. He's one of the targets of this killer, and he pairs up with his girlfriend Paula, and the two of them are trying to survive, escape, and ultimately best the killer and figure out who it is. So it's kind of a slasher movie. It's sort of reminiscent of like Halloween or Friday the 13th. You got a group of young people. There's lots of gratuitous like sexual humor and lots of like running and screaming and super bloody deaths.
It's really hard to be succinct about this movie because it certainly does not know what it wants to be. It's like, is it a whodunit? No. Is it a slasher movie?
Kind of.
There's a couple, we'll talk about it, but there's a couple great kills in this movie, but it doesn't establish it as a slasher movie. Does it establish itself as a high school drama? I would argue no. I would say no.
It's weird because this movie is like not horrific enough to, I think, please horror fans. Mm-hmm. It's not funny enough to please comedy fans.
No.
It doesn't feel like it knows what it is at all. Like it almost from the trailer seemed like it might be a comedy. Is what I initially thought.
Yeah.
And then going into
satirical.
It could be satirical. And honestly, have you seen Scream?
It's been a long time.
Without being a full-blown parody, it has a lot of satirical elements of the slasher genre.
Takes itself somewhat seriously, right?
Takes itself seriously, but it has like satirical elements. And I think Scream works really well. And this is a great movie to compare in a lot of ways to Scream because it's not satirical enough to ever like make a point. The movie just everything just kind of happens. It's very weird. And I think we'll go into breaking down the plot beat by beat and kind of discuss some of the weirdness of this film. I think the weirdest aspect that we'll definitely dive into is just the overt amount of adults hitting on and sexualizing children throughout this entire film. So if you don't want to hear about that,
Yeah, that's true. Trigger warning for grooming, I guess, to say the least.
It's weird. It's weird.
It's very odd. It's very odd.
I already feel weird about like, we both love like Euphoria and stuff. Like it already feels weird if you have like a bunch of sexual content with it, even like an of age act, like an adult actor playing
and it's like,
a child.
Yes. And it's like, they're not trying to say anything about it. It's just like something that is in the movie that they're like, oh, you crazy teachers trying to me, like
constantly. Constantly.
Oh my god.
There's a whole cast of adult men who the entire movie, and it's not explained, and we'll get into specific instances, but throughout the entire movie there's just a whole cast of adult men who are constantly trying to bone our main female character Paula, who is a high school student.
Yes.
And this does not, if you're waiting for the twist where it's like, oh, this has like a great point to it, there is no point to it. They just want to sleep with her.
Yes. And none of them are, again, spoilers, none of them are the killer.
No.
She is not the killer, which is the direction that I thought they were going to go with it. They just want to have sex with this teenage girl, or at least get a look up her skirt.
And they do.
And they consistently do.
It's weird. It almost feels like the screenwriter was just like doing his own thing. He's like, this will be kind of funny. This will be kind of nice.
Yeah.
It's
Wouldn't
like,
it be cool to see that? I mean, they're not actually in high school, but still.
It's weird.
Yeah,
it's weird. All right, well let's get into the plot. Let's break down the beats of Cutting Class, starring Brad Pitt.
Let's do it.
In this school, you don't die trying. You just die.
Get out of the school! Help! Help!
Cutting Class.
All right, Cutting Class, 1989. We open on Paula, our young high school aged female protagonist, and her dad, who's a district attorney, who is just credited, I think, as just district attorney.
At least in the subtitles, it says like district attorney. It does not say his name.
It's hilarious. District attorney man is on his way to go on a hunting trip. We see a newspaper in the home that has a headline that just says that a boy killed his dad, has now been released from the mental institution. So we're setting up for a cool little serial killer potential plot line here.
Yep.
Random shooter with a bow and arrow approaches the district attorney while he's out hunting and says, "Hey, Mr. District Attorney, over here," and then murders him with said bow and arrow. Yep. Already we're getting some really poppin' dialogue here.
Yeah.
I love that. It's like it feels like a porn setup where it's like, hey stepsister, like what are you doing over there?
I'm stuck in the dryer.
Hey, Mr. District Attorney. We introduce Brad Pitt. He's speeding through a neighborhood. He almost hits a child and then drops his awesome line of dialogue. He almost hits a child with his car and he goes, "Same time tomorrow."
Yeah, that was great.
As if like,
hot take, that wasn't his fault.
No, that kid was a piece of shit.
The kid from The Shining and pulls out in the middle of the road in front of him, and he has to swerve out of the way. Like, yeah, he was going fast, but the kid was out in the middle of the street, you know?
It's true. I mean, the kid got what was coming to him. And
he would have.
This is the first little breadcrumb that's going to run throughout this entire film, which is the film is clearly trying to convince us that Brad Pitt is going to be the murderer once murders start happening. I mean, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
He arrives at high school. He's another high school student. His character's name is Dwight. Dwight goes to the same high school as Paula, the daughter of the DA. And while they're in gym class, Brad Pitt's character, Dwight, walks up to a kid who's climbing one of the climbing ropes in gym class and just starts yanking it to try to make the kid fall. Yeah. And does make the kid fall.
Right.
And so 2 for 2 on Brad Pitt's character just being an absolute douche.
Yep.
Right off the bat.
Yep.
It's clear we're trying to root.
We should say Paula and the kid are like eyeing each other. They like are definitely, there's some sexual tension between Paula and this random guy.
Brad Pitt's just protecting this girl, man. He's getting territorial.
Yeah.
It happens. We then meet Brian, who is
the kid is Brian.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. This is how we meet Brian.
Sorry. Yeah.
And they refer to him as Frankenstein. So already this kid who just got fresh out of the mental institution, they're teasing him. Obviously nothing bad can happen there.
It is. So in the next scene, they're like at the drive-in or whatever. Like it looks like a diner or something. Yeah. And Brad Pitt's character is like, "Just stay away from me and Paula, man. We aren't friends anymore." It's like, well, I would believe you. So obviously we find out from that he is the kid that was released from the mental institution.
Yep.
And I would believe that Brad Pitt was like, hey, stay away from me, if he had not in the previous scene been the one bullying him. It's like, you want him to stay away from you and your girlfriend, but you're like bullying him in class.
You're
like,
literally poking the bear.
Yes, exactly.
The kids just reject Brian outright, like pretty universally, for being, for having gone to a mental institution and killed his father. I also love the premise that a kid who's like an actual like convicted murderer, they just like let him into a high school. Like, hey, this is clearly, I mean, not to make it dark, this movie is very much a product of its time. It's very clearly pre-Columbine. Let's just put it that way. Like, this movie is distinctly pre-Columbine.
Yes.
So Dwight and Paula are in Paula's room and they're studying, hanging out. Paula's father, the DA, is gone on his hunting trip for the week. And Dwight starts jokingly wearing Paula's dad's clothes and kind of, dancing around at him and showing off the clothes or whatever. Drops another absolute banger of a line.
Your father's a little bigger than I am. But of course, I'm much bigger where it really counts.
He's saying that his girlfriend's dad has a small dick.
Right. And that he knows that. He knows how big her dad's dick is.
In what context has he seen his girlfriend's father's penis? And why does it occur to him that he needs to really assert his dominance in this particular way? Like... your dad's got a small dick.
We are establishing him as this douchebag jock,
who also knows what her dad's penis looks like.
Yeah. I mean, it's a terrible line, but we're hammering that home.
Oh, terrible lines left and right. He comes on to Paula trying to get it on, and she says, "No, not until your grades improve." So she's dangling the old carrot on the stick for him to get a better grade so that they can have intercourse.
Yep.
Paula walks into like an art class, and either the art teacher or the principal, I can't remember, is like the art teacher is like, you need, like, you're gonna model, like, you're gonna strip down right now, like, get half naked, and you're gonna model for this class.
And so she strips down to like a bathing suit, I guess.
Yeah, like a leotard.
They're in high school, so they don't do a nude scene with an underage girl, but the art teacher definitely like is just staring her down, makes her bend over in the class. It's so creepy, and it's not. Again, like we were talking about earlier, it's not addressed in any way. He gets mad at Brian for hiding in the corner of the room, like looking at her, when he's just doing the same thing right in front of him.
And then now forces Brian to also model with Paula. He's like,
no,
that's
right.
He's like, get up here, you're gonna model together. And so he makes them kind of like stand really close. They look lovingly into each other's eyes. And now there's a little bit of sexual tension brewing between Paula and Brian.
Clearly, yes.
The man who murdered his father, the kid who murdered his father.
They're vibing. Maybe he could just pursue her in a normal way. But no, he doesn't go that route.
Not at all. So besides the creepy art teacher, who I think at this point in the movie, I'm like, okay, he's the only pedophile in the school. Like he's the only perv.
Yep.
No, principal asks.
Next scene,
the principal asks Paula to stop by his office. And then has left something on the floor, her new cheerleading uniform. He's left it on the floor for her to bend over and pick up so that he can look up her skirt, which he does twice.
And we do, as the viewer.
As the viewer, they just show right up her skirt.
Yeah.
Now, she's wearing underwear, but it's like, ugh.
Yeah. And to your point earlier, like we were talking about Euphoria, it's like you can do themes of sexuality in media, right?
Yeah.
But this isn't a theme. It's just literally like pervs.
So as the principal is like looking up her skirt, we see that someone else is peeking in on them, is watching them. And I think we don't see at this point that it's Brian. I think we just see like...
Well, I guess we don't, but we've seen him already in multiple other instances peeking behind stuff. So I assumed that it was him.
The implication is that Brian is watching. So not only is the principal violating her, by peeking up her skirt, but another student is as well. We then cut to the art teacher at the school is pulling statues out of the school furnace, and someone locks him in and turns up the heat and kills the art teacher. We don't see who it is, but it's kind of heavily implied that it might be Brian. But it's still, the movie's trying to convince us that it's Dwight, Brad Pitt's character, by showing Dwight be an absolute like menace all the time.
Yeah, I guess. I guess it's like more... It could equally be either of them. I feel like the movie's not really wanting to go one way or the other, but to me, they end up going so far in the direction of Brian that it's like, who else could it be? even though they're trying to do it with Brad Pitt. But anyway.
Dwight and friends show up to Paula's house asking for the key to the principal's files.
I have to butt in here because there's a part before that where she gets a knock at the door before they get there. And Brian is standing across the street, like just staring at her, like peeking around a bush, but like you can fully see him. And she's just like smile, like just intrigued by it. So, I mean, maybe with all the sex stuff, maybe they're painting her as just like a dumb girl who has a really bad intuition about men because everyone wants her and she's just like oblivious to it.
Constantly.
I don't know. That's odd.
It makes no sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, Brian is still perving. He's still found another corner to hide behind, a bush in this case.
Yes.
Dwight and friends show up to Paula's house asking for the key to the principal's files because I guess they think Paula has it or Paula does have it.
Yeah.
They sneak into school after hours to inspect the file of Brian Woods, the quote unquote weirdo kid, as they say.
Yeah.
They start going through the files, and then Brad Pitt's character Dwight drops another absolute banger of a line. He's talking to one of the other redhead girl that's in their class who's also sifting through the files with them. And someone suggests that maybe Brian is a cannibal. And the girl says, if he's a cannibal, what do you think his favorite part of the body is? To which Dwight responds, to which another guy responds, breasts. He likes white meat. And Dwight responds, might I add, yours are big enough to feed a family of 4.
Hell yeah, dude.
Breasts. She likes that white meat. And might I add, yours are big enough to feed a family of 4?
Jesus. It's such a weird line, man. Like, obviously, you know, high school kids, they're the worst. They're disgusting.
There's multiple layers to this line, though. If he's a cannibal, first off, she asks, if he's a cannibal, what do you think his favorite part of the body is? What a fucking weird question to ask.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's already weird. The other guy saying breasts, quote, he likes white meat. What? They realize now, a nice little callback to our episode about Sydney Sweeney's The Wrong Daughter, where they vastly mishandled mental health. Shout out mental illness.
Shout out mental illness.
They realize Brian is schizophrenic and has been undergoing shock therapy in the mental hospital. So the doctors assume that he's cured or whatever. I love that, like, they're again using the schizophrenic. Like, what was it between? I was thinking, like, I was gonna say in the 90s, but the Sydney Sweeney movie was like 2014, so that doesn't even count.
Actually, 2018.
2018, Jesus.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it is with the schizophrenic excuse being like the go-to.
There's other ones that get used in movies, but yeah, it's like that is definitely one of the like stereotypical movie tropes.
It's an old standby.
Yeah,
it's an old standby
for sure.
The whole high school class is on a field trip hiking through the woods when the class leader steps on the district attorney that was nearly killed, who was shot with a bow and arrow, who's still alive.
He's been there for, I guess, at least a day.
I mean, it's got to be a couple days at this point.
There's been a night. There's been a night, at least one night since then. So but maybe multiple.
The DA's been sleeping outside with an arrow in his sternum.
Yep.
And a class chaperone or a teacher literally steps on him.
Chris Farley looking ass. I mean, shout out Chris Farley, obviously, but
R.I.P.
this kid or this guy does he looks like a knockoff Chris Farley.
And when the district attorney wheezes in the mud, the chaperone teacher guy blames it on a bullfrog. Oh, It must be a bullfrog.
Yeah. He doesn't look down. The kids are like 10 feet away. They don't see the like bloated, dying body in the swamp. Like, it's so odd. It's so odd.
So Dwight is playing basketball. In the stands is Paula and her friend, who's another cheerleader. And
the
before
girl with the breast to feed for a family of 4.
The well endowed cheerleader friend is they're cheering together for the basketball team, and so the friend just decides for whatever reason that she's going to strip off her underwear and
give the children in the bleachers something to look at.
That's what she says. She's like, let's give them something to talk about or whatever. And starts like dancing and basically flashing the entire crowd of parents and children with her nudity.
Yep. But no one does anything. They're just like, oh my God.
Like no one reacts. Like
they're literally like 2 feet away from her. Like, oh yeah.
No one just goes, clothe that child. Like no one says it.
Exactly.
All the dads are just like, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, you know.
It's a different time, brother. It's
different time. Different time.
they cut to the principal, who clearly loves it. Like he's watching his student is like displaying her nudity to the crowd, and the principal, just to drill home that he's an absolute creep, is like loving it.
Yeah.
Again, spoiler alert, this doesn't end up having anything to do with the plot.
He's not even one of the people killed.
No. He's a needless character who's also needlessly interested in teenage girls.
Yeah. Like if you want to hammer home the point that the killer cares about Paula, like have him kill off the people that are like horny towards her.
Which I thought that's how it was going to go, because
like,
he doesn't
there'd be no one left in the school. But you know.
Every male in a 50-mile radius would be dead. But I mean, he does that with the art teacher, though. When the art teacher is the first kill,
right? And
the art teacher was kind of pervy towards Paula, and Brian is like, or the killer. We don't know it's Brian yet.
Well, yes. To your point, Brian and Dwight have a problem with it, so it could be either of them.
Yeah.
So you keep that theme, but instead it's just like more random.
More random guys wanting to get it on with her.
Yeah.
So Dwight gets in a fight during the basketball game in front of the talent scout. He can't hold it together for more than 15 minutes without losing his shit. He gets in a fight on the court, and we cut to Paula and her cheerleader friend, who's not wearing underwear, are both sitting in the bleachers, and there's a man, her boyfriend,
her boyfriend or like one of the other guys in their little crew.
One of the guys in the school has just snuck under the bleachers to look up her skirt and just see.
He's just like pulling her leg too. Like,
he's like, oh
yeah, and she's like, huh, that's that guy for you, you know.
That's Todd, whatever.
Yeah, may as well be Todd. Yeah.
And so she the guy under the bleachers pulls down the cheerleader who's not wearing underwear, and she's like, oh, it's just so and so being goofy. Pulls her under the bleachers where the killer is waiting, slices the cheerleader's throat, and just kills her.
Kills them both.
Kills both of them underneath the bleachers in the middle of a basketball game. So now we see we have some more interaction between Brian and Dwight, and then we cut to the district attorney, who is still bleeding out in the middle of the woods, and he crawls out of the mud and is like clearly trying to like make his way somewhere.
He's been bleeding out for like 4 days at this point.
There is no chance
he's
that
actually
this man
like fine.
would be even close to fine.
Yeah.
And then we have like a great line of dialogue is dropped here. Paula and Dwight are walking through the gym. When Paula asks, "What are you doing tonight?" And Dwight says, "Math." She says, "You're doing homework?" And then this is more of a performance note for old Bradley Pitt. He drops what can only be described as a aggressive black scent when he says, and I quote, "Well, I ain't got no basketball scholarship."
Well, I ain't got no basketball scholarship.
Paul Walker actually channeled that performance later in Too Fast, Too Furious when he goes, I'll do the accent. No, I won't. He says, I'll play the clip. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I said forget about it, cuz.
Like, what? Oh, it's so good. The killer, who we still haven't revealed their identity yet, kills a woman in the copy machine room at the school. Dwight hears the screams and shouts, "Do something!" Dwight runs in to see this woman is Dwight and Paula, I think.
The whole school,
basically. Yeah. Everyone runs in and sees this woman is like dead on the copy machine, and it's just making copies of her dead face.
Yeah,
sick. The coach has his arms wrapped around Paula at this point for seemingly no reason, and is like very creepy to her.
The bald coach?
Yes.
The one that looks like Anthony Fantano from the back?
He does kind of look like him.
After they find the dead teacher on the copying machine, Brian just makes a run for it. We don't know. I mean, I guess obviously assume it's him because he immediately runs because Brad Pitt is like, oh, it's him. So he's on the run. Next thing we know, there's a bunch of cops driving around in a forest. They let out these police dogs. The police dogs find
the dying district attorney.
The district attorney's like, help. And the dogs are like, I don't know, licking their balls or something.
Just uninterested dogs.
They're like terrible police dogs. Like they do nothing of what they're supposed to do. They don't find Brian and they don't get the district attorney help.
Help! You understand English? Help!
You know, like those wholesome TikToks where it's like you see like a dog like saved like a kid from a burning building or whatever. It's like, oh, this like firefighter dog like alerted the owners, whatever.
Yeah.
This is whatever the opposite of that is. These are like
the hopeless version.
You could tell they're in it for the pension. These dogs are just in it. They're in it for the benefits.
Yeah. But in the next scene, after he's been on the run for a while, Brian goes to Paula's house and tells her, bro, that's not me, dog. I'm not the one who killed these people.
Yep.
Right.
The gym teacher is now bouncing on a trampoline by himself. I love the shot. It's just a grown man and the camera's pushing in and he is gleefully just bouncing by himself.
Just bouncing. Yeah.
He looks like he has no reason to be
his
there.
butt. He hops up. It's so good. It's just like watching Anthony Fantano's Instagram stories where he does squats.
Bumping that. No, I want to hit my track. Are you bumping that? Till the windows crack. I'll be bumping that. No.
The gym teacher is just gleefully jumping on the trampoline when he goes down one more time and is impaled.
Yeah.
The killer.
That is one of the highlights of the movie for me.
It's a great kill.
I feel like the copying machine one is kind of lazy, but this one, it's a good kill. I like it. The killer sticks the American flag underneath, somehow sticks the American flag underneath the trampoline, and when he's going up, he comes down and lands, because at this point, the coach is like flopping flat, like belly flopping on the trampoline. And when he goes up, he comes back down for one last time. And then he's getting like constantly, repeatedly impaled on the flagpole.
It's a great like metaphor for the country, I think.
Yeah.
In these trying times during an election cycle, I think this movie hit extra home.
Really, yeah.
At this point, the movie is leading us to believe potentially that Dwight's the killer. So Paula's now in the school. We're not sure exactly what time of day it is. For some reason, the school is locked. Dwight's outside the school trying to get in, but Paula's now locked in and opens up a closet, and a couple of kids fall out. They've been bound and gagged and killed.
The kid that was not wearing underwear that died under the bleachers.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so underwearless kid, as she's falling, you noticed a great little detail in the movie.
So when she like touches them to like make and the bodies fall, her thumb or fingers visibly like move and like grip the guy as they're falling and they're supposed to be dead. It's so good.
This is where the movie just descends into chaos.
Yes.
Like every plot beat, we're going to try to condense this and make this as understandable as humanly possible.
It's so confusing. The edits are so weird.
The edits are weird. The best way I think we can describe it is Paula's locked in the school with the killer.
Yes.
And it becomes a slasher film.
Yeah.
So we're skipping over a lot here to make this like cohesive and like comprehensible. But Paula's basically locked in the school and Dwight is not there to help her, her boyfriend. So she's
because we think he's the killer at this point.
Exactly. So the movie is kind of pulling the wool over our eyes. Who's the killer? Is it Brian or is it Dwight? Right?
Not me.
And we haven't seen either one of them in the school. It didn't pull the wool over your eyes,
I'm
but it pulled the wool over my eyes. I'm
kidding.
convinced it's Dwight at this point.
Yeah.
Maybe I was a little too invested in this movie.
That's fine. That's good. That's what you want from a movie,
I guess.
But she runs into the math teacher.
The math teacher is somehow in the school. Again, adding to the confusion of what time of day it is. The school is locked, but the teacher's there, and the teacher drops another pervy line.
Banger, dude.
He walks out. He sees Paula's in the school by herself, and he says,
"Oh, Paula, this is a dangerous place for a pretty girl like you."
Dwight.
At school?
And why did he say that?
Why?
He doesn't know the killer's there.
He doesn't know the killer's there, and the implication is that he's about to like hurt her. This is a dangerous place for a pretty girl like you.
Yeah, someone like me might try to have sex with you.
A child. Yo, this is wild. So then the math teacher and Paula go into a classroom, and it's clear that like the killer has set out a trap at the school for some reason. So the math teacher, who I don't know why Paula's even still alone with this man at this point, given what all the other teachers have been doing.
Because she's an oblivious idiot.
I guess. She goes into this room with the math teacher, and the killer, we don't know at this point, the audience doesn't know if it's Dwight, if it's Brian, who it is. It could be the math teacher for all we know. But the killer has put out a math problem on the board and has said, basically given them an escape route and said, if you can solve this math problem, then,
the door will unlock.
The door will unlock or something. And Paula's trying to solve the problem. and the math teacher can't figure it out. It's like a simple, like, how many miles per hour is this person traveling to reach this destination? Like a classic, like middle high school math problem. And the high school math teacher is like,
I'm unprepared.
I'm unprepared. Like, I'm on the spot. It's like, bro, you have a college degree in mathematics and a child has written an equation, not even an equation, like a hypothetical, like
a child who hasn't been in school
a
the
child
last
for
5
years. An uneducated child has written a problem and the math teacher cannot figure it out. So he ends up thinking he solved the problem, and Brian pops out and says, "You're wrong," and chops the math teacher in the face with an axe, killing him. Now an axe. It's finally revealed that Brian is the killer, and this is my favorite prop detail from this whole movie. The shot is Brian comes around the corner with the axe. He's swinging it towards the math teacher, and clearly it's a dangerous stunt. You can't use a real axe. I'm glad that they had safety on set.
Sure, yeah.
Using a rubber axe, but it is it's a flaccid axe that's just flopping about as he brings it down.
Yeah.
And then they cut, and the math teacher spins, and I'm going to take the mic away from my face so I can do an impression of what he does with the actual axe. The math teacher is just holding the clearly fake rubber axe against his head like this.
And it's just like flailing around, clearly like flimsily flailing around, clearly rubber.
Flaccid, flimsy, flopping axe is just waving around.
Put that on a t-shirt.
So, you may be able to tell from our subscriber count that we don't have sponsors for this podcast yet. But for the low cost of a like and subscription to our channel, you can feed mouths like this.
Listen, don't get us wrong. We do this for the love of the game, but every single subscription helps build our channel. And eventually down the road, we might even be able to get paid enough to cover the cost of this podcast and put some food in their mouths.
Oh, no, you eat shit, please. Look, we're a small channel. Every single subscription helps. And hey, if you subscribe, every single week you get one new episode of Big Name Bad Movie Podcast.
At this point, Brad Pitt finally breaks his way into the building. He runs in and he sees that the killer is Brian. Brian's killed the math teacher. Oh my gosh, Paula, we have to get out of here. A chase ensues. The killer, Brian, is hunting them down in the school with an axe. He's following them all around the school. And eventually we make it to the school's auto shop. At this point, we have a fisticuffs battle between Dwight and Brian.
I disagree. I think it's two 50-year-old stunt doubles that we've never seen before. The movie holds on these really long action shots of them fighting with like buzzsaws, but it's clearly not them.
It's clearly stunt doubles.
I know that that's like a trope. You know, obviously they had to use stunt doubles for these like big moments, but like, they just hold on their faces.
There's no effort to obscure these guys at all. And so, you know, the cliche of like it reminds me, you know, the cliche of like the high school kid that's played by like a clearly grown man, like the Dear Evan Hansen with what's his face. It's kind of like that, but instead of it being like a 30-year-old, it's like two retirees like fighting with buzzsaws. Like you can hear joints cracking because they're so old. At this point, the battle continues. The two 50-year-old stunt doubles playing Dwight and Brian are coming to a head finally, and then Brian ends up trapping Dwight in like a vice grip and gives his big like killer end of the movie speech.
Yeah.
Just like every other man in a 50-mile radius, his whole reason for committing all of these axe murders, he confesses, is he just wants to bone Paula.
Right.
That's it.
I mean, there's some sort of like revenge element with Brad Pitt that doesn't really make sense. It's not a valid reason or whatever. I mean, obviously.
He drops like a great like incel line too. He's like, the other night when I came to your house, he's like, I was such a gentleman. Like, why didn't you?
God,
like he's like clearly implying like you owe me sexual favors. So now I have to kill. It's so weird. And like, it just feels like a weird motivation. It's kind of comical because he's now gone from like psychopathic, like mentally unwell axe murderer to just like incel. And he drops, talking about why she should bone him, he drops my other favorite line in the movie. He says, quote, "Last night I was a perfect gentleman. I felt a tingle all over my body. Have you ever felt my tingle?" I can't even get through it. Have you ever felt my tingle?
Have you ever felt my tingle?
I feel it, Brian. I feel the tingle.
Yeah, we've all
the
been
cringe
there.
tingle.
We've all been there, bro. We're feeling your tingle through the screen right now.
Oh my God.
As you subject us to this dialogue. It's so bad, dude. Paula tells Brian, like, close your eyes, like I'll give you a kiss. He closes his eyes and Paula just kills him.
Yeah.
So that's it. Of course the movie has to shoehorn in like another, like, at this point Paula is like, if we're thinking about her as like a real person, she's been traumatized. Not only has she like watched multiple kids like actually get slaughtered.
She's,
right.
Even just seeing a dead body would traumatize you for years.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the janitor, who's like a very minor character, enters the auto
just
shop.
like way more like weirder than he has any right to be. Like he's just such a creep.
He's so creepy the whole movie, and maybe they're trying to convince you that he might be the murderer. Maybe.
Sure. Yeah.
But everyone in this movie is so creepy to Paula. And the janitor, this minor character, enters the auto shop.
Jeff Goldblum knockoff.
Great value Jeff Goldblum enters the room. And he says,
"What is this? Survival class?"
Seeing a room full of dead children.
That's so true.
What the hell? What is this, survival class? Like, bro, you're not fazed at all by the dead bodies around you. And then just to like drill the point home that everyone in this movie is a pedophile. Like everyone top to bottom is a pedophile. The janitor, who's been a minor character the whole movie, watches Paula walk past him, stares at her butt and says,
"I won't mind cleaning up after you. Oh, yes."
Yeah. Very good. Very good. Okay, so she kills Brian. Some things happen. They're driving in Dwight's convertible. They're having a good time. Her hands are up. You know, they're
Paula
going.
and Dwight vibing.
They're going fast. They see something rolling down the hill. What's that? Oh, it's the district attorney.
Paula's father.
Paula's father. He rolls out into the street, and they're like, "Oh, Dad, there you are." He's like covered in shit. You know,
he's like on the verge of death.
No blood, actually.
Yeah, but he's been shot with
an
arrow. He's been surviving for presumably 4 or 5 days in the cold woods by himself.
Yes. Yeah. They are also covered in blood.
Doesn't ask about the blood on their clothes, and then drops like the great final line of the film. He looks at the kids and goes, "You kids aren't cutting class, are you?" And that's
freeze frame
on Paula's face, like, and that's Cutting Class, 1989 with Brad Pitt. Let's talk highlights and lowlights of this film.
Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, like what we were saying, the Coach Fantano killing scene.
Big thinny squat Tano here.
I love that. I think it's a good, solid little creative kill, which makes me disappointed by the ending because they have this great set piece of like the auto shop. You know, there's a lot of creative kills that you can do, but they don't really do anything with it. There's like that one kill of the killer, obviously, but it's just a classic hammer to the head, basically.
I think the low point for me is going to be the like totally unnecessary and creepiness towards Paula and the other high school students at every turn.
Yep.
Like it doesn't, not only does it not add anything to the plot, it doesn't make any sense. Like it doesn't, like everyone in the school is a perv. Like every single person of authority in this school is like wanting to get it on with like a select few like girls at the school.
But what's another highlight for you?
I'd say a highlight for me is Brad Pitt's performance.
That's what I was gonna say. I agree.
No, like he's pretty solid. Like
there's a reason that no one else in this movie was in anything of note. I mean, that feels mean to say.
The DA was in Clue.
Okay, yeah.
And that's a good movie. He's great, but he's not in this movie very much.
The main guy has like an uncredited role in The Dark Knight. Apparently,
Sweet.
I don't remember him at all. I'll find a clip though.
So he was an extra in The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Pretty sick. I think. What about you? Any other highlights?
No.
It's really it.
It's terrible, man. This movie's terrible. But
what flavor of terrible is it for you? Is it like so bad it's good? Is it like okay? Let me just give the context for people who haven't seen our last couple episodes. We've just watched 8mm. Before that, we watched The Wrong Daughter and Van Helsing. All of which I think have been different flavors of bad.
Yes.
So like Van Helsing to me was like bad but kind of funny bad.
Yeah.
The Wrong Daughter was bad and like poorly executed, so it's even hard to tease.
Yeah.
8mm was bad but well executed in certain ways, so it just kind of falls short.
Yeah.
Where does this fall for you?
I think it's definitely more in the realm of Van Helsing, where it's like a laughably bad movie. Not so bad it's good. I wouldn't put it on that level.
Yeah.
But there's definitely some very funny elements to it. You know, a lot of the kills come off very corny. The acting from the main guy who ends up being the killer is like just hilariously bad. Really, everybody except for Brad Pitt is hilariously bad. That being said, the movie is frustratingly confusing to the point where we're probably going to cut out like 30 minutes of this episode. We were trying to like figure out what actually happened in the movie.
Yeah.
So that part of it makes it like, if we're going to rank all the movies, I would say Van Helsing is the most enjoyable watch for us so far.
Sure.
This movie maybe is a second, but definitely is like so confusing to the point where it's not like a fun watch, you know?
I would back up everything you said. Like, it would be one of those, like, turn it on with your friends, grab a few beers and some pizza and just laugh at it movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it would be that, except for the confusing elements of it. Like, we pause this movie multiple times and we're just like, wait, okay, so what happened?
Yeah.
And like, it's like, so what is happening?
Right.
I think the movie also doesn't, it doesn't reach cult classic status for me. Like, it could never be a cult classic, I don't think, because I think like a common thread with cult classics is, even if they miss the mark on what they were going for, they're a specific thing.
It's trying to be horror, but it's not, because it's like comical. Like we see all these like weird shots of these big blue eyes from our main actor, like creeping around the corner or creeping through the water cooler. It's like those things are corny and funny in a way that is clearly not on purpose. And it's like, is it satire? It's like, no, because it takes itself seriously in terms of like the murders and stuff being done. Is it a horror movie? Maybe you can say it's that.
It kind of wants to be, but it doesn't have enough.
Thriller? No, because we kind of know who it is the whole time.
Yeah, that's the same issue that 8mm had for us, which is that the twist at the end isn't as much of a twist, because it's very predictable and it is kind of what you expect.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think this, because it's 50% comedy and 50% horror drama, and it's not good at either one, which direction do you think it should have gone? Do you think, should they have leaned more into the comedy or more into the horror?
You know, if they were, you know, very smart directors like Tommy Wiseau, they could have just leaned into the comedy stuff of it, you know, like just made it so bad that it's like hilarious, right?
That's my whole theory. The movie I wanted to see is a comedy about two high school boys fighting over the same girl, and they both resort to murder. Like, that's funny. That's a funny premise, and that's kind of what the movie does a little bit here and there, but it never fully leans into it.
Yeah.
And so the movie just ends up becoming...
And it clearly doesn't realize it's funny either.
No. But there are times that the movie tries to be goofy, though. I'll say that. Like, the
That's
movie
true.
does try... I mean...
The Brad Pitt black scent.
The Brad Pitt black scent. Oh my gosh, bro. I mean, that is one, but then also, like, I think the filmmakers thought that the principals and like the teachers and everybody perving on the girls was like a joke. So I think the humor of the movie, quote unquote, doesn't land in today's era, but I think at the time that was supposed to be funny.
I guess
like those are clearly supposed to be jokes.
Yeah.
Campy cult classic movies don't do too well with critics.
Yeah.
But let's rank this against the 13% on Rotten Tomatoes with, I think it's cult classic enjoyability.
Yeah.
Not how competent it is like, not how competent it is as like a movie as a whole.
We're
but
grading it on the cult classic curve.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where do you think it stands?
I think like a 3.
A 3 out of 10?
Yeah. Still.
I'd give it a 5 because of Brad Pitt puts it over the edge for me. So it's middle of the road. It's not something I'm going to go out of my way to ever watch again. But like, I can imagine
there's
like,
elements. There's definitely some clips for sure.
There's definitely some clips.
You're right.
Yeah. I think that about does it for Cutting Class with Brad Pitt. You gave this movie a 3. I give it a 5. That doesn't mean necessarily that I think you should go out and watch this movie or that you should even subject your friends to watching this movie unless you're an absolute glutton for punishment, because it's pretty awful. But I had fun talking about this one.
Yeah, it was a fun time, you know. That's you know what, to your point, that does make for a good movie if it's a good discussion, and I think this was a good one. So thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube, or leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening. Leave us a good old review.
Yes, and please subscribe to the channel so that next week you don't miss our episode where we're discussing Mark Hamill of Star Wars fame and his low-budget 1989 sci-fi movie. It's a movie from the exact same year called Slipstream. We're trying to do a cool thing where we both say it at the same time. It's just not working out.
It's fine. It's cool.
Fine. Tune in next week for Slipstream. Subscribe, like, all that fun stuff. And leave a comment with any suggestions you have for a movie you want us to watch or a star you want us to cover. Every comment that we've received so far has been great, and we've added those to the list, and we're going to work our way through those movies. So please leave a comment if you have a suggestion.
Thanks for watching.